Okay, generally there are two methods with which we can actually calculate the quantity of this storm water or wet weather flow. So we have, first one is rational method and the second one is empirical formulae method. So in rational methods we are going to take the practical values of the rainfall that has been occurring, and along with that we are going to have some based on the characteristics of the ground, we are going to determine what will be the quantum of runoff in this rational method. Whereas in empirical formulas, so I hope you know what is empirical formulae. Empirical formulas are nothing but they don't have basically the derivation. Okay, so empirical formulas are derived directly from the experimentation values. So you will have some constants with some variables. So empirical formulas doesn't have any assumptions that are made or a proper derivation for those that we have studied in the previous semesters. But usually here, directly based on the experimental studies and based on the conditions of that particular site, the formula will be derived. So in these two ways we can determine the quantity of storm water flow. So again, that is nothing but the wet weather flow. Okay, so a rational method. So here the formula for this rational method is Q is equals to, that is your runoff or discharge, is equals to C into I into A divided by 360. So what do you mean by this? So let us go each bit by bit. So C is nothing but the coefficient of runoff which is there. Okay. So next I is nothing but the intensity of rainfall, that is in mm per hour. Next A is nothing but the drainage area in hectares. So drainage area in the sense what? Your catchment area which is going to be there. So that's why this is nothing but CIA divided by 360. Now here what actually happens, let me just try to explain this in this particular formula. Imagine I have this area, okay, and I want to determine what will be the runoff coming out from this point. Okay, imagine there is a nala here, that is your entire slope is towards this, something like this. Okay, so wherever the rainfall occurs, ultimately it will join this center part and in turn it is going to come out like this. So with this particular conditions, set of conditions, if I need to say what this C is nothing but the C is coefficient of discharge. So it depends on the type of soil, or else basically I can say this C will depend on all the factors that we have considered in the previous slide. Okay, so this depends on the type of soil, the slope, the infiltration rate, the intensity of rainfall, wind, humidity, temperature, compactness of the ground, so characteristics. So all these things will be dependent, or your C will be dependent on all those things. So we have a different value of C for different surfaces that we are going to see in the next slide. Next is intensity of rainfall. So as and when the intensity is more, the more quantum of runoff is going to get generated. So that is one thing. Third is your area. So the entire surface area or the drainage area or catchment area, what we call it. So that entire surface area will be considered over here. Now the runoff coefficient C is calculated as A1 C1 A2 C2 so on up to AN CN. So let me tell you why they have considered this C1 C2 CN so on. So I'll tell you, whenever you practically consider any area, okay, so in these areas there might be buildings, okay, there might be open space playgrounds, there might be some farm fields which is there might be some roads that are passing through that. So there will be different kinds of surfaces that are going to exist in a catchment area. Okay, so that's why based on type of surface area, as I told, there will be different C. So this CN AN is indicating these n number of types of these areas that are going to be available over there. So that will be there in the numerator. So together you can write it as sigma AC divided by A1, A2, A3 and up to AN. So this is nothing but what? Your total area which is going to be there. So that's why if you check out this formula, it will be like sigma AC by sigma A. So this will give you the actual value of C, that is the average value of coefficient of discharge. Fine. So let us see different values of C in the next slide. Okay. Now, coefficient of runoff is in fact the impervious factor of runoff, representing the ratio of runoff to the precipitation. The value of C increases as the imperviousness of the area increases. For a perfectly impervious area, C will be is equals to 1. So the same thing, if I need to just explain with a figure, imagine I have some impervious material, okay, or a base. So at this point of time, whatever quantum of water, whether through rainfall or any other source, if it comes here, what will happen is, so this entire rainfall will be directly coming out as a runoff. The reason being, there is no absorption, neither there is no infiltration. So that's why entire quantum of water will be taken out as a runoff. So if this is the case, then your value of C will be 1. Okay, so it is nothing but the ratio of what here described is as a runoff to the precipitation. Why I am saying this? Because if 10 centimeter of runoff is occurring, if all the 10 centimeters are coming out as a runoff, then your C value is going to be 1. Now imagine I replace this impervious strata with a soil. At that point of time, what will happen? If 10 centimeter of rainfall is occurring, there might be some 2 centimeters that will be absorbed by the soil, and let us say some 3 centimeters that will be infiltrated. Now the runoff is going to be how much? Only 5 centimeters or 5 units. So that's why here now the coefficient of discharge will be, this coefficient of runoff is going to be what? Ratio of runoff to the precipitation. So runoff is how much? 5 centimeter, and total precipitation is 10. So here it will be what? 0.5 will be the coefficient of runoff. So this is how in simplest terms it will be calculated. Now let us check out for various types of sources what will be the value of C. First one is watertight roof surface. So here it will be 0.7 to 0.95. So you might ask me, watertight roof surface, so usually that will be made up of your concrete, RCC, right? So still then why we are taking 0.7 to 0.95? The reason is, so whether proper slopes have been given to those roof surfaces, yes or no. So if a proper surface is given, then your runoff coefficient will be more. But if we are having some, let us say this is how that slab is, okay, so at that point of time what will happen? There will be some small storage of water which may happen on the roof slab, and the same thing will be evaporating in due course of time. So that's why this will vary from 0.7 to 0.95. So based on that condition, it will they have given us a range for this. Next is asphalt pavement in good order. So here it will be 0.85 to 0.9. Stone, bricks, wood block pavement with cement joint. So here also it is 0.75 to 0.85. Same as the above with uncemented joints. So here you can check out, this is less. The reason is what? So if it is a cemented joints, there will be less amount of leakage, in turn less infiltration that is going to occur. So that's why your coefficient of runoff is more. But when it is uncemented joint, you are giving a scope for infiltration or absorption. So that's why here the runoff coefficient will be less. Waterbound macadam roads, okay, WBM roads, here we'll have it from 0.25 to 0.6. Gravel roads, here you can check out 0.15 to 0.3. It is quite less because gravel is having more number of voids. In turn, it will allow us to have more quantity of infiltration to take place. Unpaved streets and vacant lands, so it is again 0.1 to 0.3. Parks, lawns, gardens, etc. So it is 0.05 to 0.25. Wooden lands, so here it is 0.1 to 0.01 to 0.2. So again, based on this types of surface that are going to have, will be having different values of C. So all these values are determined based on n number of experimentation that have been carried out, and then they have come up with these ranges. So for these coefficient of discharges. Now next is with respect to the type of localities. Now if it is a business area in a general for calculation with respect to different aspects, so the value of C is given as 0.85. Areas closely built up, it is 0.75. So closely built up in the sense of what, whenever you have not given proper offsets, and that particular area is hugely populated or densely populated, at that point of time you can take that as 0.75. Areas with 50% attached house and 50% detached house, then it is 0.65. Next, suburban areas with widely detached house, it is 0.45 to 0.55. Now if you check out this third and fourth point which is there, attached house in the sense of what, closely packed houses, detached house in the sense they are quite abundantly spaced. So whenever you have this much, so the C value is more. Okay, whenever you have widely attached houses, then your quantity of area or suburban means if it is a village in other sense, so the more soil surface will be available, because of which the runoff is going to be less. Extremely suburban areas with 20 to 40% parking and widely detached house. So here again you can check out, this value is still lesser than the above two. The reason is, as and when you give more scope for the infiltration to occur, your quantum of runoff is going to be less. So these different values of C's can be used for the design of any of the runoff or any of the systems that are going to be there. Empirical formula method. Okay, so for determining runoff from a large areas under specific conditions such as slope of land, imperviousness, rate of rainfall, etc., these formulas are derived after a long practical experience and collection of field data. So as I said, empirical formulas usually doesn't have the derivation for that, but they depend on the experimentation works that have been done. So we have basically 5 different empirical formulas for the calculation of stormwater flow or wet weather flow. So first one is Berkeley-Ziegler formula, which is used in Switzerland. So especially, so why even they have given this area is because the environmental condition as well as the locality conditions that are going to exist over there. Based on that, these formulas are going to vary, because right now this 141.58. So there is no specific reason why this number has come up. This number has come up because of the relation what they have observed in their experimentation with respect to the discharge and all the other parameters which are mentioned over here. So that's why in this formula will be effective only in this particular area. Okay, so Q is CIA fourth root of S divided by 141.58 into A. Okay, so we'll explain what these each terms are there at the end. Similarly, we have McMath formula which is used in USA. So here it is CIA fifth root of S divided by 148.35 A. Similarly, we have Fuller's formula. We have it as Q is equals to C into M raised to 0.8 divided by 13.23. Fanning's formula, it is Q is equals to 12.8 M raised to 5 by 8. Similarly, Talbot's formula, it is Q is equals to 22.4 M raised to 1 by 4. Okay, so let us see, this Q is nothing but, in all the left hand side what we have, it is nothing but the runoff in cubic meters per second. Next we have C is nothing but the runoff coefficient that we have discussed in the previous slide. I is nothing but the intensity of rainfall in terms of centimeter per hour. Similarly, S is nothing but the slope of the area in a meter per 1000 meters. So S is nothing but the slope of the area in meters per 1000 meters. A is the drainage area or the catchment area in hectares. Next M is drainage area in square kilometers. It's here, it is in A is in hectares, M is in squared kilometers. Okay, now we'll even solve the problems on these particular formulas. Okay, so basically how these formulas work is based on the practical experimentation that has been done, and based on those conditions, favorable conditions, right? So the accuracy of that formula will be dependent. Okay, so whenever we check out the experimental conditions for derivation of for evaluation of these empirical formulas, so as and when you be close to that particular conditions, our accuracy is going to be much more. So this is the second way of calculating the storm water flow with the help of empirical formulas. Now, this is one of the important what I can say concept for understanding the stormwater flow. The same thing even will be discussing for the hydrology and irrigation subject for derivation of hydrographs. Okay, so first let us see, time of concentration is the time required for runoff to travel from the hydraulically most distant point in the watershed to the outlet. Okay, so here purposefully I am using different terminologies, so let us just read this once again. Time of concentration is the time required for runoff to travel from from the hydraulically most distant point in the watershed to the outlet. So what do you mean by this? So let's just take this figure for an example. Okay, now the entire slope is towards the upper side. Okay, so this is how the entire slope of that area is there. Okay, now first of all, what do you mean by this watershed? Okay, so watershed is, again, you can call as this you can see this border line which is there. So this is nothing but what we call it as a watershed line. Okay, so what this watershed line does is it actually differentiates one catchment area with the other catchment area. Okay, so a simple example to let you understand what is watershed is, imagine you have a mountain. Okay, so something like this is there. Okay, so at this point of time, whenever the rainfall occurs on this side, all that rainfall will be, or else a runoff will be moving towards this end. Now similarly, the rainfall occurring on the other side will move it on the other end. Okay, so there will be a point in the middle. Okay, so at which beyond left to that the water will go on one side, beyond right to that it will go to the other point of time. So that's why, so this point or else the line, imaginary line that actually differentiates the point of distribution of runoff water from one catchment area to the other catchment area, so this line you are going to call that as what? A watershed line. Okay, so here as this figure is there, so again, so there might be one more catchment area which is like this. Okay, whatever the water what I can say falls on the above of this red line. Okay, so all that will be collected somewhere other side. Okay, whatever it falls on the below that red line, so this water will be collected at this point as we are studying. So I hope with this you can understand what is watershed line. Okay, so similarly watershed in the case, what it is, nothing but the catchment area. So watershed is another term that we can vaguely use for the terminology of catchment area. Okay, so with this let us go forward. Okay, fine. Now to understand this time of concentration, okay, they have differentiated into three colors. Okay, imagine if rainfall occurs in this green zone only, at that point of time what will happen, the runoff will be generated only from this first section. Okay, so if the rainfall is occurring nearby, this water can immediately come to this nala or stream, and in turn it can go out of this point where it can be measured. Similarly, if the same in this green, imagine if the rainfall is occurring at this point of time, then the water or the runoff will take more time to reach this open channel, and then it will move towards this drainage, and then it is going to end up at the measuring point. Okay, so it can go into the other part of this. Now imagine if the rainfall is occurring on this pink area which is shown over here. So for this water which is falling over here to join any of the nala and to come here, it will take different time. Okay, so right now I have shown you three examples. One is the near one, medium, and it is the far one. So let us call this as 1, 2 and 3. Right now imagine this, the first point which is there, that is nearer to the point of collection or measurement, so that's why it will take less time for that water to reach here. Okay, so imagine this entire all the three colored areas are having the rainfall at the same time, but whenever it is with respect to the runoff that is generated, the first point will be having what I can say less amount of length to travel to reach this measuring point. So that's why time taken for this first point may be around, let us say, 5 minutes. Okay, but now in the second one, so for the second point, imagine the length is more, so that's why imagine this will take around 15 minutes. Okay, now similarly the third point is even further, so let us say this time it is required is, let us say, 30 minutes. So now you can see the quantum of rainfall occurring, whether it is green area, pink or yellow, it is same. But whereas for that runoff to get generated and to reach a common measurement point, it will take different time duration. So that's why this 5 minutes, 15 minutes and 30 minutes what we are going to have. So these are nothing but the time of concentration of those respective points. Okay, but now as a whole, whenever I see, I'll just repeat that sentence once again. The time of concentration is the time required for runoff to travel from the hydraulically most distant point in the watershed to the outlet. Okay, so this is our outlet which is there. Okay, now hydraulically distant point. So hydraulically distant point, it doesn't mean that this is that distance. So we are not directly measuring the length of travel. Okay, it is based on the other characteristics, the quantum of runoff that will be generated. So based on that, this hydraulically most distant point will be determined. I'll repeat my word. So hydraulically most distant point will be determined in a catchment area with respect to the runoff generation and its flow characteristics. So don't consider this as the longest length of travel. No, it is not only the length of travel. Apart from that, the slope, the ground quality, the perviousness of that soil, along with that whether the vegetation is there, the compactness, the wind, temperature, humidity. So all these factors are going to include for the hydraulically most distant point. So basically, in simplest of terms, if I need to say, whenever the rainfall occurs over this entire area, whenever the rainfall occurs on this entire area, so if a runoff that is generated from any point of from that catchment area, the maximum time duration what it takes to reach the measurement point, that is nothing but the time of concentration. So right now if I consider this with this explanation, right now if I had, so if I consider third one as the most hydraulically distant point, then the time of concentration is going to be 30 minutes. So this is what the time of concentration is going to be. Now similarly, as I explained, so we are going to even study regarding this in the hydrology module 3 for generation of hydrographs. Factors affecting selection of a sewer material. So first thing, so these are the factors on which your material of sewage can be selected. First is it should be resistance, the material should be resistant to acids, gases and solvents, etc. It should be resistance to even the erosion. Next, the strength of that particular sewer material should be enough to withhold the uplift pressure as well as the downward pressure from the backfilling that is going to occur. Next, cost, so it should be economical. Ease of assembly or handling, so even with what easiness we can basically lay that pipeline as well as joint from one pipe to another one, so that needs to be there. Availability of fitting, so the raw materials or the materials that we select for the sewer pipeline, so those things will be easily available. Next, flow characteristics. So it should be capable of handling these various flow variations. Now, why do we need with respect to all these? Okay, let us discuss about these. First is with respect to resistance to acid, gases and solvents. So why do we need to make sure that your sewer pipeline is resistant to all these things? Is because whenever the sewer is flowing inside that sewerage line, so the conditions may become anaerobic. So at that point of time, there are possibility of partial degradation of all the organic and inorganic pollutants that are there in that particular liquid, and in turn that may cause the difficulty. And even regarding the erosion, so whenever if you check out, imagine this is that sewer pipeline, right? So this is how the sewage is flowing. So at this point, usually in sewers, the flow will not be full, so usually it will be a partially flow, what we call it. So for a water supply system, most of the time your entire depth of pipe or entire diameter of that pipe will be covered with the flow, whereas for sewers it will be usually 50% of flow will be there. So at that point of time, what will happen? So the sediments which are there, the suspended particles which are there in that sewer will, whenever the velocity is reduced because of reduced flow, so these will start to score on the surface of that particular pipeline. Okay, it will start to score the surface of the pipeline. So because of which, what will happen? Because of this, your particular material of that sewerage line can get eroded. So that's why even the material should be capable of withholding such kind of abrasion or erosion because of the characteristics of that liquid. Next is with respect to the strength. So strength wise, if I check out, so once the sewer is laid, so usually on top of that we are going to put the soil to cover it back. Okay, so none of the sewerage lines you see on the road, right? So everything will be dug up, and first the laying of pipeline will be done, and on top of that again we are going to put up with the soil. So at that point of time, so that's why we need to make sure that this soil which is available, means this particular pipe material should be capable of the loads that will be falling because of this particular aspect. Next is cost. So for any project to be successful, it should be as economically feasible as possible. Okay, so that's why the cost benefit analysis will be done. So based on that, the economical one can be selected. Ease of assembly and handling. So as and when the ease is more, so it is easy for the workers to basically lay those particular pipes and even the joint one pipe to the another. Availability of fittings, that is the raw materials which will be there, as well as the accessories for connection, as well as various apparatuses what we are going to have with the sewerage line. If those things are available with us, then it will help us to select the sewer material. And last one is flow characteristics. So this should be able to it should be able to inherent, or else basically it should be able to work under the various flow conditions. Okay, so let us go about these particular factors one by one. First one is resistance to corrosion. Sewer carries wastewater that releases gases such as H2S, that is hydrogen sulfide. This gas in contact with the moisture can be converted into sulfuric acid. Okay, so H2S plus H2SO4, H2O, that is water, will gives rise to sulfuric acid, that is H2SO4. Okay, the formation of acid can lead to the corrosion of sewer pipe. Hence, selection of corrosion resistance material is must for long life of the pipe. So as I said, because of the anaerobic condition and the chemical reactions that are going to occur within that particular sewer line, so usually this hydrogen sulfide is a product of anaerobic degradation. Okay, anaerobic degradation of organic and inorganic matter basically generates this hydrogen sulfide gas. So this itself will give you that foul odor whenever you go near that drainage or sewerage systems. Okay, so this when reacts with the water, okay, this plus H2O will gives rise to your H2SO4, that is nothing but the sulfuric acid. So that's why your pipe should be able to withhold or else control the such attacks of acids. Okay. Second one is resistance to abrasion. So sewage contain considerable amount of suspended solids, part of which are inorganic solids such as sand or grit. These particles moving at a high velocity can cause wear and tear of sewer pipe internally. This absorption can reduce thickness of pipe and reduce the hydraulic efficiency of the sewer by making the interior surface rough. So here you can check out, basically what will happen is these suspended particles which are there, or settleable particles which are there in that sewer, they will start acting on the surface of that particular pipeline, because of which in due course of time there will be some erosion of the pipe material that may takes place. So that's why even that needs to be resistant for any material to be selected. Next, strength and durability. The sewer pipe should have sufficient strength to withstand all the forces that are likely to come on them. Sewers are subjected to considerable external loads of backfill material and traffic load, if any. They are not subjected to internal pressure of water. I'll repeat the sentence. The sewer pipe should have sufficient strength to withstand all the forces that are likely to come on them. Sewer are subjected to considerable external loads of backfill material and traffic load, if any. They are not subjected to internal pressure of water. So here what I intend to say is, imagine, let us say, okay, this is that pipeline. Okay, so whenever it comes to the next part of the lectures where even the line of sewers will be studied, so at that point of time usually you can understand, usually if pipe is laid, right, so usually first part is you are digging, so you are going to dig it at a respective depth and then you are going to place these pipe, and then on top of that you are going to put the soil. So these particular soils which are going to be there, okay, so these particular soils which are going to be there, so those things are going to be or else these load that is going to be put on top of this sewer line, so the material should be strong enough to what I can say withheld these particular forces. Apart from that, one more important bit what he has said is they are not subjected to internal pressure of water. The reason for this is, as I told you, most of the sewer lines are partial flows. So whenever we consider the flow of water in water supply system, that time the water will be usually under pressure. But whenever we talk of the sewerage system, that time the sewage will not be flowing under pressure under any circumstances. So usually the top portion of this will be at an atmospheric pressure. So that's why, so it will not have any internal pressure of waters. Okay. Next, to withstand the external loads safely without failure, sufficient wall thickness of the pipe or reinforcement is essential. In addition, the material selected should be durable and should have sufficient resistance against the natural weathering conditions to prove longer life to the pipe. So here in the second point what we are saying is, so it should be strong enough, so that's why the wall thickness should be more, along with the reinforcement which is required to take the tensile loads. In addition, the material should be durable and should have sufficient resistance against natural weathering conditions. So natural weathering conditions include what? Your sunlight, or your the environmental conditions, basically your wind, humidity, and even the other what I can say components of atmosphere which are there. So though it should be able to be resistant to all those particular things. Next is weight of the material. The material selected for the sewer should have less specific weight, which will make the pipe light in weight. Okay, the lightweight pipes are easy to handling and transport. So here, what they are trying to say is, see, strength of that material is a different part, and the weight of that material is a different part. So we have different materials where the weight might be less, but the strength of those particular what I can say materials are going to be much more. Okay, so it doesn't say that the thickness of the material indicates the strength. No, that is not the case. Okay, because simple example, if I say, if I take let us say a brick uh, sewer line. Okay, so where the walls of the bricks walls of the sewers are made from brick, something like this. Okay, imagine these are the bricks which are there. Yeah, so these are the bricks which are there. So here the thickness will be more, but the same way if I consider um, a cast iron pipe, okay, that time the thickness is less when you compare it with the bricks. But whereas if you check out the strength, so with various different aspects, right, so the strength of these will vary differently. So that's why what they say is, as and when the weight of the material is less, it is easier for the person who is laying and actually doing all the works over there, so that will become easier for them. So that's why as and when it is lightweight, the pipes are good for laying and connection points, whereas it is even it needs to have a strong quality, and it should withhold all the external forces that are going to act on them. Next we have imperviousness. To eliminate the chance of sewage seepage from the sewer to surroundings, the material selected for the pipe should be impervious. So again, the best example what I can give you is two things. One is with respect to your brick sewer, okay, and one more is with respect to your, imagine these are the bricks, okay, so this is a brick sewer what we have, yeah, and one more is your, yeah, one more is your cast iron sewer, okay. So at that point of time, now you can check out, so bricks can absorb the water over here, sorry, wastewater or sewage, okay. In turn it may infiltrate or exfiltrate out of this particular system, okay, whereas for a cast iron or any of the other steel materials which are going to be there, so there the absorption will be less, okay, or else it will be like nil only. So even at that point of time, that's why imperviousness is also one of the factors. So you want impervious nature of the sewer material to be there, so that the amount of absorption of this sewage is going to be very minimum. Next, economy and cost. The sewer should be less costly to make the sewerage scheme economical. So as I said, for any project to work out, the finance is going to become the major factor or else limiting factor. So that's why for any projects to work successfully, so even the economy or economical aspect of that is going to play an important role. Now next is hydraulically efficient. The sewer shall have smooth interior surfaces to have less frictional coefficient. So what do you mean by this? Imagine again, if I take the again two example, one is of brick sewer and one more is of cast iron sewer. So you can imagine this particular brick, if it is not coated, okay. So you have that rough surface of brick. So as and when the surface is rough, for the movement of sewage, basically we are going to have some resistance. So as and when the resistance will be more, your head loss is going to be more. Okay, as and when the head loss is more, that indicates what? It is hydraulically inefficient. It is hydraulically inefficient. Okay, so similarly, if I consider this cast iron pipe, so here the surface will be quite smooth when I compare it with the brick sewer. So at that point of time there will be less resistance for the flow of sewage. So that's why here it will be hydraulically efficient, and in turn the losses are going to be less over here. So that's why even whenever we select that material, it should be favoring regarding the hydraulic efficiency. So as and when the hydraulic efficiency is more, the head loss that will be occurring because of this will be less.